So there are two things that you can start a fight with virtually any Christians anywhere in the world. Put two Christians from anywhere in the world into the same room. You can start them arguing or even fighting each other over two things. And that is, number one, orthodoxy. Number two, orthopraxy. Orthodoxy is right believing or traditional believing. Every time the church has had a council like Nicaea, Chalcedon, Ephesus, various things like that, it was to affirm orthodox teachings. It's to basically, these are the walls, or these are the guardrails, and you stay on it, you're safe. You stay on it. This is the way that Christians have always believed. If you get off of that, you're in the ditch. You're in danger of not only spiritual harm because you're not affirming right belief, but you're also in danger of leading others down that road, into that same ditch as well. And so that's where expulsion of the Arian heretics, expulsion of various other things. Examples of orthodox belief: Jesus Christ, Son of God, equal in all ways with God, and essence, but submitted in all things, right? The hypostatic union of Christ, his union of two natures in one body. The fact that Christ had a physical body, not just like he wasn't just a ghost that appeared, that he resurrected in a physical body, that he didn't just have a supernatural appearance thereafter as well. That I mean, there's so many. There's so many. Can't even possibly list them all. The Trinity, and that God is the creator of all things. That, I mean, just those are important. They're not unimportant. They're very important things. The thing that most people at least the thing that splits denominations typically is not orthodoxy, though. So since we've had, like, most of the orthodox issues have been settled, the area that people get into the ditch is over sin issues. What is sin, as well as what is still considered sin. That's orthodoxy. But nowadays, if churches split or if they decide to change denominational lines, it's usually over the second thing, and that's orthopraxy. A church decides that it no longer wants to be affiliated with Lutheranism because they don't believe in paedo-baptism or child or infant baptism, and so they've decided to break away. Or it could be that they've decided, like, most of the denominations are separate from one another over how their church is organized or how they're governed. It's or how their ministers resolve conflicts and things like that. And so a church will decide, we don't like resolving things in that manner, or we don't want to have a governing board that's organized in that way, and so we're going to break away from missionary and Christian Missionary Alliance, and we're going to go to Assemblies of God or something like that. It's basically like sports teams trading players at that point, really. It's just different teams have different philosophies on how to play the game, those are trivial examples, and those are trivial expressions of it. Like, they are more serious than that. They are more important than that. But areas where people will get real spiced up over it is, do you sing out of a hymnal? Do you sing off the wall? That was the worship wars of the 80s, 90s. That wall singing was so abhorrent because people weren't. Do you sing primarily hymns, or do you sing choruses? Is it acceptable to use secular music as a part of your worship service, or just as a sermon illustration? Do you use homilies? Do you do call and response? Does your preacher preach topically or exegetically? Does your there's so many different areas where people kind of get into weeds about just simply like, this is the way we do things. Because orthopraxy means traditional or right practicing. There's a third, though, that gets overlooked, and I think is the main reason why we're so willing to fight over the other two. It's the body of the two-headed monster that we ignore. And that is Ortho-Pathos, right or traditional feeling. See, throughout at least Protestantism and a lot of Christian history in general, there's been this idea that it's not okay to feel. Feeling is irrelevant. Feelings are inherently sinful. And in some ways that's true. And that's one of those things where it's difficult to even contest it without getting into kind of grays of nuance that people don't want to talk about. But it is okay to feel if you're a woman. It's kind of the general sentiment that a lot of people that I come across is it's okay to feel if you're a woman. But if you're a man, which traditional church leadership has been male-led, if you're a man, then it's not okay to feel. And so it's not okay to talk about feelings. And that's left us in a position where we're not able to talk about right and wrong feelings. And we just act out in the ways that we do in sports stadiums, and we try to downplay emotionalism at church unless you're a Pentecostal or charismatic. You try to downplay those things because we see them as either evil inherently, or we see them as deceptive. And like I said, there are ways to view that. There are truths embedded in that, in kind of the mess there. But where it's left us is that people have tons of wrong feelings about tons of things. Wrong feelings about their politics, wrong feelings about their racial subcategories, wrong feelings about their emotions themselves, wrong feelings about one another, and we're not able to address those wrong feelings because we're afraid of talking about feelings whatsoever. But if you look in the Gospels, and if you look throughout Paul's letters, and you look through Acts, you see men who were not afraid to feel. Whether that's Jesus, the shortest, one of the most famous verses because of its shortness in the Bible, the shortest, 2 words, Jesus wept. Jesus, when described by Isaiah, the suffering servant passage, it says that he was acquainted with grief, a man of sorrows. That he was okay with feeling. He wasn't afraid of his emotions, but he wasn't controlled by them either. And that's something that Christianity, and I think humanity in general, has just lost wholesale. That we are either controlled by our emotions, or we are terrified of our emotions. I think that drives a lot of the depression and a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the kind of unhealthiness of political and social dialogues, is that it's what fuels the discontent and the discord among orthopraxy and orthodoxy, is that we're so afraid of, we're so controlled by and imprisoned, enslaved by our emotions, that we're not even getting to the point of right thinking and right believing or right practicing, because we're so clouded by our emotions. So it's a new word for you, I'm sure. And so it's something for you to think about. It's worthwhile for you to study. Go through the Gospels, go through the New and the Old Testament, and see the emotions embedded in the text. And let that guide you into a place that it's okay to feel, but it's important to feel rightly. Ortho-Pathos.